What is the purpose of our life? It is to become a man. Kierkegaard shows us the path to this realization by passing from the sphere of aesthetics to that of ethics. He also tells us that the last sphere is that of night of faith. Being a Christian, for Kierkegaard, the ultimate leap from embracing the absurd, moving from ethical accomplishment to eternity, is through faith. However, without being Christian, we can access this eternity through the imprint we leave in others, in the world. This story is an attempt to illustrate these mechanisms. The duck waddles among my budding ideas. He just landed on the front lawn of the house. He always arrives around the same time, between 9 and 10 in the morning. I always find his arrival majestic, with his wings deploys. As soon as its paws touch the grass, it folds them into a clumsy posture. Ungainly, he starts walking around. Sometimes he is accompanied by a few comrades. This is what I have observed since my study, where I have been working over the last 3 years due to the COVID pandemic. He's a bit like my collaborator, distracting me at the right time, when I'm going in circles, bouncing from idea to idea, without being able to think clearly. I hear doors slamming. My son is awake, and so is my wife. See you soon, Mr. Duck. I go down to the kitchen to get some coffee. Arriving downstairs, at the foyer, I go around on the left of the round table on which sits a vase whose bouquet welcomes visitors. I hear my son's banal conversation with his mother. I stop for a moment at the kitchen door. I watch them busy themselves, preparing their breakfast, exchanging espresso expressions. My wife, Zoe, is wearing her jogger outfit. Her blonde hair is in a ponytail, soaked in the Californian sun. They frame her face with its angular jaw, softened by the curve of her chin and her pink lips. Her thin, straight nose is as well proportioned as her ears. This perfect balance is completed by her sky-blue eyes highlighted by her fair skin. She has a pearly and regular smile. She is much taller than me. Her body is athletic and muscular. Our son, Jason, is as tall and athletic as she is. He has her blue eyes. On the other hand, he has my black hair and the olive skin of the mixed beauty of our union. He is already a young adult, 21 years old. Time passes so fast. I remember when he was a teenager and found himself in court for stealing a car. Through my connections, in charge of his next campaign, I was able to speak to the judge to ask for clemency. I remember our conversation. It was brief and direct. He was behind his desk reading one of the files stacked near his elbow. Without looking at me, he pointed to one of the 2 chairs in front of his desk. I began to introduce myself when he stopped me in my tracks by raising his hand. He was always reading. I took the opportunity to observe him. He was tall, slender and in his 60s. His short white hair adorned an elongated head with pink skin. His thin white eyebrows formed 2 lines just above his oval glasses. They rested on a narrow nose sloping obliquely towards his tight lips. Finally he closed the file and looked at me. "What are you here for?" I introduced myself and explained the reason for my visit. "Oh yes," Michael explained to me. "I am actually in charge of investigating your son's case. His case is serious. Serious but simple. I am also well aware of your company's reputation. If memory serves, your company is the one that managed to change the law to allow hedge funds to have access to money from pensions and deposit bank accounts." Yes, indeed. What a blow. This change in the law had unleashed passions. Ultimately, politicians of all stripes were unable to resist the lure of profit. What a masterstroke. You presented this to them as being the democratization of access to investments previously reserved for the rich. Everyone benefited from it except of course the taxpayers, i.e. the middle classes. These speculative funds keep their earnings and do not pay taxes. On the other hand, their losses, because they are money from pension funds and deposit banks, are socialized. Taxpayers and voters are putting pressure on their representatives to bail out these hedge funds. You summed up our project well. Thanks. Do you know why I became a judge? No. The law, the rules govern our society. They force individuals to interact with each other. These interactions anchor people in time and help them define themselves. I can't imagine anything else that's more important than what I do. I help people become men and women. I am the intermediary through which people pass from an undefined subject, lost and deluded in their own subjectivity, to a defined subject. I frowned despite myself. Are you wondering why am I talking to you about this? You yourself use the law, institutions, people to achieve your ends. But you use them without any regard for your interactions with them. Indeed, you are a Don Juan of business conquests. You are not interested in the people involved in these transactions. You're not even motivated by money. The material conditions to achieve the satisfaction of the ideal transaction are a suffering for you. Can I be direct with you? Yes, of course. Your wife and son are suffering. Since we're here about your son, you're going to have to make a choice. Are you going to let the ideal of the transaction you live for annihilate your being, or are you going to choose yourself? Are you ready to move from the indefiniteness of your subjectivity to the definiteness of time, governed by our laws and institutions? Are you going to anchor yourself in time through your relationship to others, to your son? Judge, I was expecting to ask you a favor for my son, but I realized that I did myself a favor by coming to see you. Thanks. You know, if I see your son again in my court, after he has received his sentence, the law will not offer you a second chance to make this choice. I understand what I have to do. You will never see him again in your court. I am very happy about it. Welcome among us, goodbye. Bye. Once Jason received his sentence, we decided with Zoe to subtract him from his environment. Zoe was so happy that we could spend a few months together, and approved of my plan to help Jason. She was always so supportive. The angel who by her sole presence guarded me and guided me towards myself. We sat down with Jason. He was not enthusiastic, to say the least, about going to the Philippines. I smile at the thought of our trip. He expected, as always, that we would travel in a private jet, with the limo to take us to the airport. His face when a yellow taxi came to pick us up and we arrived at the Philippines air counters, in the economy class lane. It was priceless. He didn't say anything, but I knew what he was thinking. That he was above the rest. I whispered to him, "You don't need a private jet." The televangelist's fear of being tainted by the impure thoughts of the common people is not true, it's just vanity. He looked at me, surprised by the accuracy of my words. After a while, he leaned towards me and asked, "Are we poor now? Did you lose the company? Are you punishing me for what I did?" His words reassured me to the highest degree. Of course, he was worried about his own condition, but he was already beginning the process of analyzing what was happening to him, what was happening to us. I told him no, I hadn't lost the company. And no, this was not a punishment. However, me and his mother had decided to give him a break from his present existence to be able to change his paradigm in relation to life. I could see to his expression that his analysis of his situation had just exploded in a conflagration of reason and feelings. You're not going to be able to find the answer right now. It's not the destination that's most important, but the path you take, that you choose and will choose. I knew he didn't understand a word I was saying to him. He looked at me like I was Yoda, expecting me to levitate everyone for our boarding when they announced it. Zoe, my guardian angel, pretended to listen to a podcast. She couldn't help but smile and enjoy the moment. The trip passed without incident. We arrived at the Tuguegarao International Airport. Our family picked us up and took us to the farm. Jason adapted more quickly than us. His Tagalog was improving very quickly, although sometimes it was more Taglish. He discovered new talents, new skills. He tended to take on projects for which he did not have enough knowledge. My uncle told me to let him do it. You can't protect him from failure. Success is in failure and life is in death. They live in affixation. It's your own choice to oppose or affix them. At the time, I expected him to levitate among the shadows and fireflies of the fires dotted around the valley to join the starry dance reflected in the rice fields. After a few months, Jason told us the few discoveries he had done on himself. He had changed so much. I remember this conversation so clearly. All perceptions of this moment were part of who we were, are and will be. Our very present reinvents this moment to relive it. Our subjectivities take what they need from each other's lives. I felt pride and disappointment. In fact, Jason told us that he did not want to pursue higher education. He wanted to learn a trade. He was seriously interested in carpentry or plumbing. I didn't expect that. I would have liked him to go to one of the big universities, like us. We could have given him an inheritance admission, with all the money we had given to the university we graduated from. Ultimately, Zoe said we couldn't force him to follow the same academic career as ours. Our judgment could not take precedence over our recognition of his conscience. Regardless, as parents, we thought he should give himself time to dwell on his decision. We asked him to finish college and get his baccalaureate. After that, if he wanted to continue the apprentice route, he would be free to do so with our support. I think about this conversation often. Each time I come to the same conclusion. It was the best decision. This had been able to ensure his happiness and ours, knowing that he was happy. They looked at me. Do you want some coffee? Yes, thanks. Jason, do you want to go to the club to practice our swing? Sorry, I promised the neighbors, the Nguyen's, that I would give them an estimate for the repair of their kitchen. They had a flood yesterday. After that, I will visit the different construction sites that we take care of. Okay, later then. Yes, I have to go. He works too much. Really, who did he get that from? I know. I wanted to talk to him about financing his new vehicles. One of the directors of a bank at the club has an interesting proposal. You know he's fiercely independent, and next time, be direct. I wanted to tell you about our investment in Houston, Texas. Ah, how's it going? Well, I got a call from Joe. He told me that the real estate syndicate lost all the investors' money. What? How is it possible? The syndicate purchased individual houses during the pandemic. People also bought these houses in this same geographical area, since they were teleworking. Institutional investors also got involved, to rent them. Other companies were buying to repair and resell them as quickly as possible. In our case, the syndicate's real estate portfolio had a value that only increased with all this speculation. Unfortunately, recently, due to the drop in rents, to maximize profits from the rents collected, the syndicate has not maintained the properties as required. Their value decreased, and the municipality of Houston took charge of the situation. For what? What can they possibly do? The properties are in such a state of disrepair that it is unsanitary for tenants to remain where they are. 3,000 to 4,000 people are affected. This is why the municipality had to intervene. It's horrible. How could we become associated with this company? It was Joe who introduced me to this company. The representative and manager of the syndicate, when he made his presentation, told us what we wanted to hear. Most of the people who were there are part of our community. How much have we lost? 15 million. That's about just under a quarter of our assets. Who will manage the media fallout from this fiasco for us and the company? Joe is in contact with our lawyers and we have retained the services of Wilsame and Fjord. They're new. Why didn't you use Bula Papa and Koi? They did me a favor for one of our projects. I would return the favor. I hope they will be as good. I think so. Joe also told me that we should be ready, in case the intensity of this scandal becomes too high, to make a charitable contribution, to calm the animosity of the people towards our wealth. Has Joe given some suggestions yet? Yes, he told me about effective altruism. He told me that it would be a good opportunity to get in touch with this network of donors. I think I read a book about this. I think it was by Toby Ord, a philosopher from Oxford. He is one of the founders of this movement. I'll look into it. You know, I would like to work with the city of Houston to remedy the situation. But, you said Wilsame and Fjord will take care of handling this fiasco. I could work with them. I really like this idea. How much you have changed. I had to change for Jason and this wouldn't have been possible without you. Even when I was absent, your presence linked me to time. Lost in the turmoil, your love was my anchor that kept me from drifting. I knew that one of these days you would be able to choose yourself. How? I have always prayed to God to put you on the right path. And I hope that one day you will be able to surrender to Him so that you no longer have this original anxiety. Have you ever gotten over your anxiety? Death? Yes. It's been a long time since I received Jesus Christ. I envy you. Don't worry, you're going to have to find your own way out of your anxiety. I will never impose anything on you. I am so far from your faith. There are other paths to eternity. Which? I don't know. The only example that comes to mind is that of Abraham. God asked him to sacrifice his son to him? Yes. His faith allowed him to make this ultimate sacrifice because he knew that by giving up everything, he would be able to receive everything. He took the leap towards the absurd, the challenge of accepting death in exchange of eternity by freeing oneself from a dead death. He lives a living death. I remained silent and thoughtful for a moment. Zoe put her arm around my shoulder to comfort me. Don't worry, you'll get there one day or another, it will fall on you without warning. Well, whoever lives will see. I'm going to go and review this proposal from our client. I leave you then. See you later. She gave me a kiss and left. The house was silent. I decided to approach our client's proposal through the facts. Our client wanted to know if it would be possible to get subsidies for their coal power station to compensate them for the energetic transition. I remembered the conversation with my cousin Romeo during our stay in the Philippines. We were talking about climate change affecting the crops. Then we started to talk about the energy transition to mitigate the acceleration of these changes. He pointed out to me that the problem, according to him, was not well formulated. I prefer to talk about pollution than climate change. This word became too contentious. While pollution is not only to the source of the issue that we try to solve, but this is also what we could agree on. No one wants to breathe bad air quality, walk in toxic sludge, eat carcinogen vegetables. Yes, and then also, we are talking about energy transition while it would be better to talk about the accumulation of new sources of energy. You are right, we cannot talk about transition, at least not immediately. We should talk about the development and accumulation of new sources of renewable energy in addition to fossil fuels. Indeed, the world population continues to increase, although less quickly than expected. This means that we will need more energy for the creation of wealth. But whatever happens, the effects of these climate changes are undeniable. We see it clearly here, in rice cultivation. Climate change is accelerating faster than expected. We are affected by it at all levels. Food production, fishing, the value of companies which have declining productivity due to extreme working conditions, the value of real estate, especially that by the sea, threatened by landslides, floods, tornadoes, hail, fires, etc. This is why we must do everything in our power to mitigate the effects of these changes on each other. Changes are necessary, but we must also take into account economic and social conditions. Sometimes they are not together. I think that in general, people are for or against technology. It appears that they are against it, but this is due to circumstances. If they change, then they become for it. Seeing that I still had doubts about what he was saying, he gave me an example. Look what is happening with the mechanization of our rice fields in our province. We are experiencing what happened with Japan's agricultural population as the fastest aging in the world. The younger generations are not staying, and this aggravates the effects of their low birth rate. In the Philippines, there is an aging of the agricultural population, not due to a decline in the birth rate, but because young people are not staying. They do not want to work in the fields and/or will live in urban centers. However, mechanization has not yet happened because as a community we have decided that these machines will unbalance our social peace. This would only reduce the wages of workers, the income of their families, and consequently their consumption. And local commercial activity would suffer, because everyone knows that the poor spend to live and the rich accumulate more than they spend. Did you say, not yet? Yes, our agricultural population continues to age. Very soon, to maintain our social cohesion, we will have to embrace this mechanization. These machines will cover the work of workers who are weaker than before, who are retired or who have died. I see, it's not so much a question of being for or against technology, but more a question of when a technology can be introduced within a society to favor the happiness of the greatest number instead of the accumulation of properties by a few. Exactly. But not everyone shares this conclusion, because their circumstances blind them. Ah, yes. In the wealthy circles that I meet, most recognize these changes, but they live in a bubble so hermetic and frictionless that they think that their wealth will allow them to survive these changes. They are special. Until the moment when inequalities will be so great between them and the rest of the population that even the 20% of the population, on whom they depend for their security and the sustainability of their property, will be so impoverished that they will collapse under the weight of their own waste. The brutality and the violence of reality will force them to change, otherwise, they will be crushed by the cogs of the moving world. On the other hand, the majority of people, like me and you, are guided by facts. The development of renewable technologies has accelerated. The International Energy Agency, in their latest report, indicated that the cost of producing electricity from solar panels decreases exponentially compared to that of coal-fired power plants. In the near future, electric car batteries and batteries storing electricity produced by solar panels in individual homes will be able to make up for the lack of electricity during peak consumption for a third of the cost of coal-fired power plants. The owners of these plants have become complacent. Me and my colleagues gave them a golden position. No competition, they regulate themselves, and in exchange they must make the necessary investments to keep the distribution network in good working order and modernize it. They didn't do anything about it, they sabotaged themselves. It's high time to push all these new technologies. They have no excuses. They put their profits above the common good. Their approach is eminently disrespectful of reality. Finally, a part of the population, much less fortunate, rejects the facts. They see it as a conspiracy. Even as their neighbors, colleagues, family die of heat stroke, drowned in a flood, flattened by a tornado, they are in denial. I see their dissatisfaction with their lives. They are always looking for the next happiness, never satisfied. And now, we tell them that they must stop this frantic race for happiness, addicted as they are to the fleeting satisfaction of their desires. They are trapped. They dissolve their reality in the timelessness of their indefinite subjectivity. They refuse to anchor themselves in time by satisfying an ideal. This is why many of them do not hesitate to use violence in all its forms as a means of self-destruction, since suicide is the only solution to their withdrawal between each satisfaction. They experience unhappiness in their quest for illusory happiness. They live in despair, a dead death. You know, that reminds me of who you were the last time you were here. You were very lucky not to go to such extreme. Zoe was able to supply the presents that you were refusing to yourself. And Jason put you in a situation where you decided to choose yourself. You are definitely the beneficiary of synchronicity. I know, but I envy you and Zoe for the faith you have. You are able to have a step back from your own existence, to be at peace. We have never stopped praying for you. I hope one day you will be able to let yourself go. Let yourself go, the echo of these words came knocking. I walked in the light coming from the window. Slowly I approached. Closer and closer. Let yourself go. They echoed in the silent house, the calm eye of the cyclone of time. It looked at me curiously. There was neither malice nor benevolence towards me. Just an eyewitness to my future. The streets of the community warped peacefully in the heat of the afternoon sun. I brushed my fingers against the window. I closed my eyes. My luminous darkness splashed on my being. Let myself be guided towards the sphere of eternity in a leap as simple as it is absurd and sudden. This luminous absurdity suddenly imposed itself on me. The realization that I no longer wanted to justify my existence by my own misery, that I did not want to hold it dearer than my own life. No longer be inspired by the suffering of Caligula to ensure that all the people around me, us, are, if not more, as miserable as us. And if by chance you dared to try to deprive them of their misery, they would stone you with their fear of being deprived of their divine pain. I give up this death to reconcile myself with the impact, good or bad, that I have in the lives of others. I embrace the absurdity of eternity through which the echo of my life will continue to beat. I was looking at the dusk who was just born and Mr. Duck taking flight towards the fragile truth from heaven, losing myself in the other, losing everything to receive everything.